Hello, and welcome to One Voice Live, where we talk about One Voice, what it is, and how it fits into the world of singing. I'm your host, Alex Zeto, and I'm joined today for her One Voice Live debut, certified One Voice coach, Natalie Rankin. Natalie, I'm so happy to have you on the show for the first time. This is our second show in our series, Vocal Translating, which is where we take potentially confusing words or phrases from the conventional world of singing, and we translate them into our One Voice language to better understand what they mean. And today we are digging into mixing and belting and what those things mean in our world. So Natalie, will you start us off? Will you tell us a little bit about when does mixing and belting come up in a singer's life?
Yes. Mixing and belting, excuse me, come up a lot specifically for musical theater singers when a different quality is required of them. And for me, it came up a lot with character quality. So like I would be, if I were playing a Disney princess, people would probably ask me to mix that. And if I'm playing Elphaba and Wicked, I would probably be asked to belt it, right? And so if I am a mixer, but I get cast as Elphaba, or I get cast as like Lady of the Lake from Spamalot, and they're like, ooh, could you be a little beltier? Could you belt that? And I'm like, ooh, actually I'm a mixer. And then other way around, if you can only belt it and you're playing like Catherine in Newsies or something, it's going to be a little more mixy, and people are going to ask that quality of you. That's where it came up for me personally.
Or so it came up for me with choir teachers who thought belting was really bad and unhealthy, and they would ask me to mix or head voice it, and I didn't like how head voicing it sounded, and I didn't know how to mix, so I could only give them this belt that they didn't like, and there was drama. There was drama with that.
Because they feel so far away, you can be like, I can either be this singer or that singer, and I can't give you anything in between.
Totally, and that has been my journey forever up until One Voice. And I think that's a lot of girls think like, oh, I can head voice it, or I can like smash you in the face with all of the weight possible and nothing in between. And it also comes up a lot when we're just listening to singers. There are so many conversations I remember being in high school and even now where people are like, oh, she just has like so much head voice in her belt. Or like her percentages are like so interesting.
You sort of just mentioned how mixing equals healthy and belting equals unhealthy or whatever. Mixing, there's a seamlessness to it that are people like, oh, you can like mix so high and like everything just sounds the same or whatever. And then the other thing is like belting, like, oh man, she can just really belt so high. But it's not the same as mixing, because you would also never say, oh, she can belt so low. Like I really want, it's all about the high notes.
Yes. Belting, I feel more so being impressive. Mixing, like you said, being more like a seamless, like beautiful, easeful sound.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you tell us more about your personal experience with mixing and belting before One Voice?
Well, I have two stories, and they're short, so don't worry. I was singing for a casting director at a summer theater intensive, and I sang the song Astonishing from Little Women. Some of you might know it. And I belted the crap out of the whole thing. I can't remember. I think I started at, I'll find my way, I find it far away. I did that whole deal until the end, but I couldn't belt the last note. And so I had to mix it, and I was like, oh, I just got to do it. Like, hopefully, like, I feel like my mix pretty much sounds like a belt, so I'll just like seamlessly do it, sweep it under the rug, no one will know. And the first thing that the casting director said after I finished, he was like, you ran out of breath at that last note, didn't you? And I was like, he saw right through me. It was terrifying. And then from then on, I was like, well, everybody knows I'm mixing, so I can't like fool people like that anymore. On the other side of the coin about it, because I could belt all the notes, and then the instructor of the class said, it's really taking you out of the style because you're like rock singing this whole thing and you're over singing it. Could you just like pull it back? And I was like, no, no, this is the way that I sing this. So it was hard because I couldn't build a bridge from one to the other. And when one was asked of me, I couldn't. And then when the other was asked of me, I also couldn't do that. So again, I felt like two different singers. I was like, well, you can get belty me, like diva me, or you can get princess me, and there is no in between.
Yeah. Ugh. And that feeling of like, I've been caught. Like, 'cause we feel like it's fake. We feel like we're faking it when we do the lighter side of things. And then when
Yes.
someone's like, that's not it. You're like, oh no, I knew it.
It's not it. It doesn't feel like it, but this is what I do. So I just try to mix as loud as I can to fool you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's the risk of using these vague terms that we don't fully know or understand what they mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think with a lot of these vocal translating things, it's going to come up time and time again. These words are not specific enough. They describe a quality of sound, and attached to those qualities of sound are like I said, like character qualities. Belting is strong and powerful and loud and high. Mixing is easy and effortless and pingy and princessy and all that. So if I'm someone who can only belt, I have found like a great strong belt, and someone's asking me to mix, by them just asking me to mix, I'm not able to figure out how to do that. Again, I can't build a bridge from one to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were to just, in common vocal terminology, if I were to just put it in my head voice, it would sound too weak. And it wouldn't, I can only go so loud in my head voice. So there's that. So I still don't know how to get, I know the ping you're talking about, or I know the power you're talking about, but I don't know how to get there. And those words can mean different things to different people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, like in musical theater land, Sutton Foster is like iconic mixer. But in my opinion, so is Barbra Streisand, but they don't sound similar at all. Not at all. Or like Sherry Renee Scott is a great belter, but so is Idina Menzel. And to me, they are completely different singers too. So you are describing the quality of sound, but it's not always the same quality for everybody anyway. So we got the bottom of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And mixing and belting, in no way do most people explain what it actually means or how to do it. So like you're saying, it's inherently a quality of sound. You can't achieve a sound. You can do something to achieve a sound, but you can't just be like, here's a sound, let me give it to you.
Exactly. That's also where we get caught up with imagery too. Because if you were to say, well, how do I belt? And they're like, well, just imagine that you're just like, yell it. Just like yell the song. Or like just sing it as loud as you can. Or like all of these ideas get so mixed up because when people use those words, sometimes they're thinking about the way that it feels to them and to them when they are making those sounds. So that will work for some people, but for others, it won't at all. And I would rather I'm a big fan of having a common language that is not potentially exclusive to people who don't feel what I feel.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's dig into what mixing and belting means in our world.
So we are talking about mixing versus belting. In our world is a difference in weight. And when I say weight, in one voice world, what we mean is simply restriction of air and vocal cord intensity. So the more air that you restrict, the heavier the weight is. And the harder your vocal cords are pressing together, not letting a lot of air out. So if we're talking a heavy weight, we're talking like Kelly Clarkson. We're talking like high intensity. You don't hear a lot of air in the sound. And then on the other side of the coin, mixing is what we call a mid-weight, which is a medium vocal cord intensity pressing together, letting a medium amount of air out, not too much, not too little. And this is where we get the Sutton Fosters of the world, the mixy, the pingy.
Can you give us just like 2 examples of maybe go from a heavy to a mid-weight?
Yeah, of course. So if I were singing, I don't know why, but from Moulin Rouge, Someday I'll Fly Away just came into my mind. Anyway, yes. So then a heavyweight, it would sound like this. Someday I'll fly away. You don't hear a lot of air in the sound at all. It sounds tight. It's a little squeezy. My vocal cords are pressing together to restrict a lot of air. If I were singing it in a mid-weight, I would light it up just a little bit. So someday I'll fly away. But not head voicey at all, not light or breathy at all, just not as intense of a sound. not as much air restriction.
Anything more about that before we move to a scenario?
Oh, I want to touch on effort. So technically, it does take more physical effort to produce a heavyweight because my vocal cords and the muscles in my larynx have to work a little harder to restrict the air. But that doesn't make it unhealthy. I want to really underline that because I think that's a huge common fear around belting is, and what you said, like you said, your choir director said, no belting, only mixing because mixing is healthier. I think people get mixed up with health and the amount of effort or the amount of air that's restricted. I had a choir teacher who only spoke in a lightweight because she thought it was healthier, because she said, in order to sing healthily, you should have no tension here, and you should only, it should be free and effortless always. And so she always spoke in a lightweight and drove me nuts. I didn't know it was a lightweight then, but I was like, that. But yeah, so then as we get more restricted, we feel the effort happen here, and we are told that that's bad. Or we'll get to a place where like we get crumbly and cracky, our voice gives out, the weight fails as we get higher. So we're like, oop, I guess that's bad for me, and then we stop. But I just want to point out the difference between vocal health and physical effort to create a sound.
Excellent point. Yeah. It's just the same as going up in weight at the gym. Like, it's more effort. It's not bad as long as you're ready for that weight and you know what muscles to engage and what to let go of, etc.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, getting rid of the extra tension, because they're right in a sense. The external muscles, the shoulders, the neck, the head, all, the abs should never get involved ideally. But just like at the gym, you can improve your form. You can improve like, oh, I actually don't need to jut my chin out like that, because now that I know what's happening in here, I can tell my body, oh, okay, it's actually okay. I can take it from here, sort of deal. They're just trying to all help out. And also, just like at the gym, it's about conditioning. I can tell you right now, I would not be able to go to the gym like tonight and go run 5 miles because I'm not conditioned for that at all. I probably die. Or to, every time I went to the gym, oh, let's see how far I can go today. And tomorrow I'll go a little bit farther. Tomorrow I'll work a little harder. It's all strengthening and conditioning.
Yeah, great point. Okay, shall we do our scenario?
Let's do it.
Okay, I'm going to be a choir teacher, music director type person. Natalie is a one-voicer. I am not. She's going to be singing a song, and I'm going to give her a direction.
Okay. Let it lead me to my past and bring me home at last.
Wow, what a voice. Beautiful. It's a little shouty. Is there any way you can put it in your mix or put a little more head voice in there?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay, let's see it. Let it lead me to my past and bring me home at last.
Awesome. Thank you. And scene. Wonderful. Okay, great. So Natalie, can you explain, first of all, how you made that adjustment and then how you knew what adjustment to make?
Yes. What was the first question? Absolutely. Repeat yourself.
Absolutely. What? How you physically made that adjustment?
Oh, well, I started out in an extremely heavy weight. And when you asked for a mixy pingy sound, I knew that you meant a midweight. So that's what I went for. And I restricted less air that time.
Beautiful. Great. And so what were some trigger words that I used that you knew to decrease your weight?
When you described the initial sound as shouty.
Great.
First of all, I was like, ooh, my weight's too heavy. And then what you asked for again was a mixy, pingy sound and kind of tone it down a little bit, which means kind of ease up on the weight.
Awesome. And in the other direction, let's brainstorm. What are a few trigger words that we can know people want a heavier weight?
That's a great question. When people say that they want a stronger sound, or like, people always use the word powerhouse. I feel with belting, they're like, I just want you to bring the house. I want you to nail the note in the face. I want to hear your powerhouse sound, sort of deal.
Yeah. I also feel like I had this isn't so much about the sound, but people would say to me, whenever they brought in my diaphragm or like support or anything from down here, I feel like they wanted a heavier weight from me.
Definitely. Or like sing your toes, like sing when they like bring also like emotions into it or something like that. Like, just give it all you got. Just give it your all.
Like, leave it all on the floor.
Leave it all out there on the stage. Yeah.
Right. So now we understand what words to listen for. What are some ways singers can access these different weights?
So we have little character voices that we do to demonstrate the weights and to practice the weights. If my arm is the weight scale, we're going from lightest weight to heaviest weight. So we have character voices that we can demonstrate and practice at super lightweight and right at a midweight and also heavyweight. And the lightest being yoga teacher, aka also my choir teacher. So we're gonna speak like my choir teacher, aka a yoga teacher. So like, namaste, welcome to class, spread your mat out, say hello to your neighbor, all of that, like just lovely, letting a lot of air through. You can hear a ton of air. One way to gauge this is to put your hand in front of your mouth and feel the amount of air that's coming out. So if I were to do yoga teacher, hopefully I will feel a lot of warm air coming out of my mouth. If I don't, that is a good telltale sign that I may not actually be in a lightweight. And yeah, so I just put my hand in front of my mouth and say, namaste, welcome to class. Yeah, I feel lots of like puffy, hot air. And then moving on into a midweight, our example for that is robot. So I would say, hello, my name is Natalie. Take me to your leader. I don't know why it's always take me to your leader. What if I just want to...
Mine is I have come to earth to love.
Oh yeah, like at the end of that that episode of The Office where Michael pretends to be a robot. He goes, I was just learning how to love. Anyway, he's in a midweight. If I'm gauging that, I've just done yoga teacher, so I know it should be less air than that. So I'm gonna put my hand in front of my mouth. I was just learning to love. Yeah, so there's like a consistent stream of air, but it's not as puffy and light and breathy as lightweight, which is a good sign. And our very last landmark is Valley Girl. So she's extreme heavyweight. She restricts her air a ton. So she's like, I would like a venti mocha frappuccino, but no non-fat milk with whipped cream on top, but don't tell anybody that I've had the whipped cream on top. She's that girl. So, but yeah, I don't really feel a lot of air coming out at all. It's only when I hit hard consonants where air has to come out, like a k or g or something, where we actually have to use air to make that sound, that plosive, if you will. But yeah, so those are the voices that you can try and gauge what weight you might be singing or speaking in.
Great. And so let's say I really want a midweight. I'm speaking in robot. I was just learning how to love. Now what? How do I apply that to a song?
Well, I would suggest aiming to sing that song, that entire song or the entire cut in robot. As silly as it feels. And every now and then, if you're like, am I doing this right? Use that hand gauge to say, am I, which weight might I be in? To determine that by how much air is coming out. And if you really get super lost, do all three voices and then go back to robot. And then you can gauge that amount of air. I like to start if we're just learning about weights, starting in yoga teacher and then moving to robot. If you're aiming for robot, because then you get more familiar with the amount of air that should be.
Awesome. Love it. Beautiful. Natalie, any other thoughts mixing and belting before we move on to our question segment?
Oh man, I just want to bring it back to the vocal health thing, I really like, I want the takeaway to be that it's not unhealthy to belt. Yeah, it just takes work and practice and time. And also, it's a huge mental game if you've never sung in a heavyweight before and you've been told your whole life that belting is unhealthy or that it's, you know, only some people can do it or whatever. It's a mental game for sure. There's a lot of fear in singing high and loud and powerfully. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing about it that's unhealthy, and it can be scary, but you got nothing to lose.
Totally. And likewise, for those belters out there who haven't been able to find their mix, or as we now know it, midweight, it will be just as exhausting and difficult for you.
Yeah.
You would think it would be easier, and I can tell you from experience, it absolutely is not. But it is so possible if you are willing to put the work in. And that's really what it comes down to. What are you willing to work for? Yeah. So if you want to get a midweight, if you want to sound like Sutton, you can do it. And if you want to like belt your face off like Jessie J, you can do that as well.
I want to do that.
I want to do that too. All right. Okay. Let's move on to our question segment of the show.
Question time.
This is a question from Kyra Bell. I hope I'm saying that right. She's actually a Bobcat, I think class of 21.
Yeah.
Fellow Bobcat at Texas State. And her question is, what does a developed rumble sound like? Which is an excellent question. And she sent this in through Instagram. So what's cool about rumble is that it is just another coordination. So just like how in chest or middle, we can easily access all kinds of weights and vocal tracks. The same is true of rumble. So there's not one sound that a developed rumble sounds like. It kind of depends on the singer. That being said, it will most often sound very low because it is simply that set of notes. So yeah, it'll sound low. But beyond that, it can sound like any weight, any vocal track shaping. I have 4 clips. I'm going to start with Her. Her, her from the world from, she's a R&B singer. She's excellent. Before I play these, Natalie, any thoughts? Anything to add?
Oh, yeah. I think a developed rumble too means just like being comfortable and having access to all of rumble and having access to all weights. For me, in my life, in my rumble, I would say that mine's not fully developed because I can only access my whole rumble in a heavy weight. And as soon as I lighten up, some pitch things go wonky and I don't always super have it. But I think we'll hear in some of these clips too, all different weights in rumble.
Totally. Yeah, I'm similar. Down to like paper, probably a C, I can like do it light. I can change my vocal track shaping. And then after that, it's like heavy, short vocal tract or bust.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's listen. She does this like little riff. I want to say down to a D3. Can you hear that?
Yeah, it gets so quiet.
E.
Yeah.
I'm gonna play it one more time. It does. They all get really quiet at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like so much air is coming out. So that's a super lightweight example of a rumble coordination. And now we're going to listen to Miley Cyrus, who's doing a C sharp. This is just a half step higher than what we just heard, but it sounds totally different.
Before you go, summertime sadness.
Yeah.
I wanted you to know that, baby, you're the best. I got my red.
No, baby, you're the best. So she is slightly heavier and has a much shorter vocal tract, so it actually doesn't even sound nearly as low as the other one, even though it's just a half step difference. Oh wait, her. Oh, that's fascinating. She's actually above Miley. I got that wrong. So her isn't even going as low as Miley, but Miley sounds higher because her vocal tract is shorter.
Yeah, that's so weird.
Fascinating. All right, shall we look at our male examples?
That's
Okay, first one. This is Patrick Page from Hadestown. I do that because it's just like crazy.
Why do we build the wall? My children, my children. Why do we build the wall?
Insane. So he starts at a G, which is like very top of male rumble coordination, and goes down to the next G. Why?
The entirety of his rumble coordination.
And then some, yeah.
Sounds so low. Tell me if you agree, because his vocal tract is so long. It sounds like he's just singing in the depths of hell, which is, you know, appropriate because that's where his character lives. But dang,
So cool. And last but certainly not least, Josh Turner.
our man.
And that's, I think, yeah, that's a C. That's a C in male rumble.
Woo!
It's just so impressive. What do you think his weight is in that? It's kind of hard for me to tell.
Will you play it again?
Yeah.
I would say mid to heavy.
I think it's mid, but then at the end of that last note, he kind of lets more air out to go to a lightweight.
Yeah.
I think he probably gives us the most variation in his rumble than any of the other artists. Because I do feel like, although you can make all these different choices in rumble, most of the time when people are singing down there, they have their go-to because it's like, it's so low. Who's trying to do like the whole weight scale in rumble? Unless like you're us and crazy.
Right. Style thing too. I think he's a country artist, and so he's used to a neutral to small vocal tract, mid to heavyweight, all the way down, and that's the way that he found to most comfortably achieve those notes and like the style sounds that he wants. And then on the other end of the spectrum is her, who is an R&B singer who has a completely different style world, and everything sort of has that cushion of breath over it. Like her whole sound is like that, which is so consistent all the way up and down. But the way that she's felt comfortable accessing those notes and still staying in her style world is through a much lighter weight.
Totally. Yeah. So these are 4 examples of more developed rumble coordination sounds. And there you have it. Natalie, any other thoughts on rumble?
No, I think we hit the nail on the head.
I think we knocked it out of the park.
We knocked it out of the park.
I love it. Okay, great. Awesome. Natalie, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on mixing and belting, sharing your voice with us, literally. You guys, please submit your questions to questions.singonevoice.com, or feel free to just shoot them here on our Instagram. DM us, and we can answer your question as well. And if you like what you're hearing, and you want more, or you want to figure out how to apply some of these things, you can find information on our website about private training, singonevoice.com. Follow the links for private training, and you can have a free 30-minute consultation with a One Voice coach like myself or Natalie Rankin.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Below. Next time on One Voice Live, I will be joined again by Michael Marchese for another vocal translating, and we are going to be talking about what is falsetto. Right? Good one. Super exciting. So that is same time, same place, Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. CT, 7:30 p.m. ET on Instagram, and we will see you then. Natalie, thank you so much.
Thank you. This is so fun.
Yes, and thank you for watching One Voice Live.